person's wrong. And so we acknowledge that. And so I think one of the things we've learned is that we want to be ready for everything that we can potentially foresee in the winter, and we want to be ready early. And so that is why we are talking about this on November 1, because we're going to be ready from today going forward as best we can for what emergencies might be in front of us. And then also to take care of Albuquerque, whether it's seniors in their homes, it's our meal delivery programs, it's our firewood delivery programs. Again, many folks know we do this every year, but we want to emphasize this year we're ready in advance. And we're also excited for the holidays in the winter season. But these things can get very dicey, as veteran reporters or watchers know, whether or not we can deliver these kinds of services that people depend on each and every day. And of course, our most vulnerable is always our top priority. Now, that includes the senior folks that I mentioned, but it also includes, unfortunately, our unhoused community, low-income individuals, folks with their heat out. So we're going to touch on those programs today. So I will just remind folks, too, that we tend to watch for a couple of key indicators. You know, what is cold? I felt like last night was the first cold day in the city, and people's heaters went on and things like this. So we understand that, but from an emergency response perspective, it's really about freezing temperatures. And so as a reminder, we do things different when it's freezing at night. We do not necessarily do things that different just because it's 40 degrees. And so just drawing that distinction, because we do get a lot of calls into 311, oh my gosh, it's cold tonight. So that's kind of how we do things. And then of course, with respect to our roads, it depends on whether or not it's freezing, and then whether or not, is the magic number 17 degrees for ice slicer, or 23? Anyway, there is another temperature below zero that is very important, because when it gets super cold, our salt and our cinder and our chemical mixtures don't work. So that is one demarcation I think we hit 2 years ago that is a very much just stay off the street kind of thing. So we'll get into that, but just letting you know, there's a couple of demarcations. Is it freezing? And then it's either 23 or 17, I'll remember, or below. And then of course, wind can also play a factor too. Is the wind so bad that we have ancillary issues about city services? Okay, so with that preface, I actually am going to go pretty fast with respect to some of our part, which is mostly this. We're having a people-focused plan this year. And so, of course, it includes roads, but we're going to prioritize our most vulnerable populations. And it's about the right response of services for our most vulnerable. And that's why we're here at the Gateway Center. This is going to be the first year where the Gateway is extremely relevant. First and foremost, for this facility right here, this is going to be the first year the 24/7 emergency drop-off is in operation, and that's a great thing for our city. So in many ways, a congratulations and a thank you to the state legislature, to the governor, to city council, who've made sure that we've stuck this project out despite construction challenges. We also know that our sheltering needs go up. In general, we tend to handle between 700 and 900 people a night. And that is now going to be across multiple shelters, which our director of Triple H is going to walk through how this is going to work. But this map is very different than it was before, because before it was less coordinated and it was focused on one location, which is our Gateway West. Now you can see it's going to be focused actually on 6 different locations. Also, we're going to be very transparent about when there are beds available. And so we actually are going to put it on the website. So this is our citywide shelter bed usage. It does not necessarily include every private shelter. We acknowledge that, but these are the ones that we're tracking. And as you can see tonight, we have some beds available. So we're going to be using that to determine whether or not we need to do literal emergency shelters at community centers and things of that nature, which we're ready to do. But now we're going to be able to share sort of where we're at in that process. And also what's not on here, depending on how cold it is in March, we're hoping to have our recovery gateway functioning in this network as well. And so this is part of the new gateway network that we're building that includes not just gateways, but also the Barrett House, as you can see on there, and Joy Junction, and some others, and Good Shepherd that we work with as part of a integrated system to make sure that everyone has a safe and warm place to stay each and every night, but especially when it's extremely cold on our streets. So with more on that, let me hand it over to our Housing, Health, and Homeless Director, Gilbert Ramirez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Gilbert Ramirez. I'm the Director for Health, Housing, and Homelessness. I'm very excited to be able to kind of talk about some differences that we're doing for our plan this year. Stepping as a director in January, our planning begins early. What is our network staging up, and also how do we look at how it serves our residents who might be most at risk and are most vulnerable? This year, understanding that, when we do emergency implementation plans, a couple of things I really wanted to make sure happened this year is that we had an outward-facing document to the public that you're going to see here to the right that's on our webpage that shows what is our plan and how are we doing that, integrating new services that came online this year. We're definitely leveraging our ability to use technology. So what the mayor referenced here is an outward-facing tool for the community to be able to know where shelters are and what their bed capacity is. We're working really hard with our partners to give us those updates and at least have updates done weekly, if not nightly. Our facilities are definitely being updated nightly, and so this allows us to be able to make a call to say, hey, running short on beds. We're also watching national bulletin boards as to what's coming our way with weather, and do we need to activate anything for additional capacity, more beds, and that's going to be our level step plan here that you're going to see. So just briefly, reminder that, when we put this in motion, this is really about temperatures when they reach critical levels. So sometimes we have freezing points, 31 degrees, and I won't lie, our team was already looking at Halloween was supposed to be a very cold night, and we were already like, we may have to launch one day before our presser, but we were ready, right? And then it kind of climbed. It's never an exact science, but you have to be ready for that. So with that being said, always understanding that science behind this, we look at temperature threshold, severe cold, wind chill, and also what are the factors for actually looking at hypothermia or frostbite, right? So all those things get rolled into one when we start saying, do we have beds available, and are we ready to deploy, do we need more capacity? Understanding also, there are going to be individuals that choose to not access our shelter system, and we understand that. We want to make sure that it's offered, it's available, and that we can do that, and it's a multi-department approach to doing something like that. And also this year we're doing a little something different with, providing some extra resources support to our fire folks who are going out, so we can offer something a little different to them too, like blankets, etc. So with that said, basically what the plan is, if you're not aware, our Gateway West facility, formerly the WEC, we've done some major renovations and investments into our dormitories out there. As of right now, we have 12 total. 6 are renovated, and we hope to have the 7th done by December. It was a full court press to make sure that those dorms were renovated, new beds, new floors, new showers, new lights, and they are much warmer and safer facilities. So with that being said, we definitely want to leverage that, and we keep a close pulse on what the bed count is there, and we have a capacity to expand even more with our contractor and our partner to be able to house that. We definitely work alongside our ACS partners and this first responder drop-off. Locally, we want our first responders to be back out on the road as quickly as possible. But if they identify someone willing and open for shelter, they can bring them here, and then we can transport once we have enough individuals up there. If the streets aren't safe to do that, we accommodate, and you'll see that we have cot capacity and ability to actually have some folks stay here overnight. So our leveled plan really does show we're leveraging Gateway West. Secondly, if we had to, we will use this facility with our partner here to expand beds here. And if we have to go to a 3rd level, we can definitely take more at the West Side facility. And then lastly, in the coordination with our other departments of Youth and Family Services and Senior Affairs, we can activate a community center site and or a multi-gen site to be able to do more cots. So those are all phases that we've considered, worked very hard. Another way we're going to leverage technology is typically you see, thanks to you all, the announcement that says school's delayed and or school's been canceled. On the city website, you're going to see an emergency banner get triggered when we decide and have determined it is not safe for unhoused to be in the streets, and that they should definitely take advantage of shelter, and we have our shuttle available, and you can call this number to be able to pick someone up if in need. We will trigger that red banner on our website. It's ready to go when we trigger it, and that way our partners, our other shelters know we're hitting frigid temperatures. This is a severe warning for weather concerns, and you'll see that activated so everyone can see. It will pivot right on over, then you can see our shelter dashboard to see where are we with our beds, what's available in the community. So these are some strategies that we've implemented this year, leveraging our digital technology as part of our comprehensive plan to be able to serve those most vulnerable. So again, we do want to make sure those who are willing and wanting to seek shelter, we will do our best to make sure you have that accommodation in a shelter bed. Thank you.
Okay, so 2 things. Maybe, Connor, if you can help us, we might move these visuals right here so that the next few speakers can, or at least the DMD one. Go ahead. And then let me introduce our next speaker. And so one of the challenges historically has been, well, if someone needs transport, right, they're freezing on the street. That's literally like what's happening. What do we do? Last year we figured this out, and this year we're going to be doing it again. Because we have the Albuquerque Community Safety Department, we are able to transport people. Not necessarily that instant, but we run a shuttle sometimes 24/7 to do this. And so our director is going to talk about that in just a moment. But the one thing also that I wanted to mention is that when there is a snow day, if it is a school day, the city usually piggybacks off APS. If it is not a school day, as you all know, usually we make a call. But I mention that because it also is dependent on the weekend or the weekday. So on a weekend, we are usually in general much more lax about these things because obviously it's not a work day and City Hall is not coming in. So just as a preference, on a weekend, it's usually a wait and see approach, and we match whatever the weather's doing. On a school day, we follow APS. On a weekday non-school day, we'll make a judgment call on whether or not the city should be open or closed. Okay, so with that, our ACS director.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jody Escobar with the Albuquerque Community Safety. And I just want to pause because we did mention that we did figure this out last year, but we almost figured it out a little too late. And I'm really happy and excited that we're being so proactive and ready to launch immediately. Typical New Mexico weather, right? We're ready for fall, now we're in winter, and now we're not really sure. But we're sure that we're ready to support the community in the way that we need to. So we're dedicated to ensure that everybody has access to warmth and safety during these winter months. We're proud to be working alongside with all of our community partners as well as our city departments with this layered approach to really make sure that we have the resources that our people need. Last year we started our emergency transport in mid-December, and we ended, I believe, in March, early March, and in that time we transported 1,000 people. So we understand that the need is there to be able to transport our folks to a shelter. We are prepared to start tonight. Tonight will be the first night that we have our transport. And that transport is going to be available from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And there will be a number that we will be make sure that everybody is getting. But that number is 505-418-6178. And that's from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. One thing that we did this year that we learned from last year is we've increased the amount of people that we've hired for this initiative. And with that, we've added monitors to the shuttles. So we are going to hopefully have bus loads of folks that might need outreach. And so these monitors have been versed in community partners, the shelters, housing assessments, and so now we can actually start these talks with these folks in this process as we're transporting them to warmth. And so we're excited to be able to kind of add that extra layer, not just a bus ride to our shelter, but also start talking to them about their needs that we can meet in a better way for them. So once again, that transport service starts tonight, and that'll be from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. every day of the week. And we'll make sure that everybody has the number. Thank you, guys.
Okay, all right, so another quick interlude before we hear from our fire chief. For folks who were editing, etc., we also had requests for B-roll because when you all can't make an event and because it's snowing, so this is your B-roll of like stuff. So just letting you know, this was also in Connor's notes, but I jumped in front of him. So like after get the B-roll of the trucks, B-roll of this, it's the B-roll party for winter. Okay, so in an unrelated fashion, let's bring up our fire chief, Emily Hardy.
We're the B-roll. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am actually really excited that this year we're doing this press conference earlier than the first really cold day because the fire department likes to also talk about some winter safety. statistics to help all members, all residents of Albuquerque be safe. So between December and February is where we see 1/2 of our home heating fires in that 3-month period. Naturally, as everybody is getting their chimneys up and getting their heaters going, that's where we start to see those home heating fires, especially if you haven't had your chimney cleaned or you're not following safe practices. So with home heating fires, 1 in every 7 home fires and 1 in every 5 home fire deaths involve heating equipment. So this is a really busy time of year for us, but it can also be really deadly if people don't follow safe practices with heating equipment. So you want to make sure that you keep anything that can burn, anything flammable, at least 3 feet away from any heat source, like fireplaces, wood stoves, etc. So a lot of people stack their wood rather close to their fireplace or wood stove. That's not a safe practice. Keep it at least 3 feet away. Also, anything that could light on fire, you want to keep it away from at least 3 feet away from space heaters or your fireplace. You also want to make sure that only one appliance that's heat producing is plugged into an outlet at a time, because if you plug multiple heat producing like appliances, like multiple heaters into one outlet, that can also cause some fire issues. Another thing that's really important this time of year is carbon monoxide alarms. So we tend to really seal up our houses in the winter because it's cold. But then it's really important that we pay attention to carbon monoxide and have those detectors installed in our home, and that we're testing them once a month. Carbon monoxide is odorless, tasteless, and so but it's also a silent killer. So one of the things with carbon monoxide is if everybody in the home feels sick, and it's not obviously a cold, but just kind of flu-like symptoms without the fever and all of that, but just kind of feeling ill, including the pets, that's a good indicator of carbon monoxide. So if you call 911, if you suspect carbon monoxide in your home, the fire department will respond out and we can test the atmosphere in your home. But it's also very, very critical to have those smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors installed. This is also a time of year, once we see the ice come and the snow come, that we see an increase in slips and falls. So it's really important to keep the area around your home shoveled or iced. And if you have neighbors that might not be able to do that because they're elderly or need assistance, we always recommend helping out your neighbors to keep their area safe if it becomes icy. And then the last thing that I want to touch on is our partnership with our other city departments related to our response during the winter time, specifically to outside fires. So as it gets colder, we have increases in numbers for responses to outside fires, generally coming from individuals trying to stay warm or cook their food that are unsheltered. And so and it's gone up over the years, and even though it's not quite as cold as we'd expect this time of year, we had last night between midnight and 8 a.m. we had 76 outside fires that we responded to on top of all of our other call volume. Last year, just to echo Director Escobar, we realized a little bit late that the volume was too high for our frontline crews to manage. And so what we did is we implemented a outside fire program. It was a pilot last year, and we brought it back this year. We're bringing it back 2 months earlier this year, so our outside fire truck will go into service tomorrow. It is a pickup truck, so sometimes people are like, why is this pickup truck showing up? But it has capabilities to extinguish fires. And this is an additional unit that we've added into our system, a seasonal truck, to help our frontline crews stay available for fires and medical emergencies. We have a directive that we extinguish every outside fire that we respond to, and that can be a challenge for firefighters because firefighters are also very compassionate folks. And so when it's really really cold outside and we're asking or we're extinguishing a fire that's being used to warm. This is why we're very excited that we now have our sister department, ACS, that we can call out and they can provide transport to shelter for those individuals that can no longer stay warm with the fire that they've lit. We've also partnered with Triple H, and our crews will have blankets and coats because sometimes individuals do not want to take that transport. And so when we extinguish the fire, we are able to at least offer them a blanket or a jacket to stay warm if they don't choose to seek shelter through the ACS transport. The last thing that's really important for businesses related to outside fires, they can spread if we don't locate them. So our truck is out patrolling and they're taking 911 calls. So the first thing is if you see an outside fire, please don't report it through 311. Report it through 911 and you'll get a response from fire. And for businesses, it's really important to create a defensible space around your business. So what that means is, this is a wildland technique, but you want to make sure that if you have pallets and things that are flammable, that you're not storing those up against your building, because those are really easy things for an outside fire to spread to cause a structure fire. So you want to store those away from the building. If you're having any issues, it's wise to not store them close to your building at all. But if you create that defensible space, if there's an outside fire, it's less likely to spread to your business. So again, we're really excited to have this truck go into service. They'll be in service starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and we will keep them in service likely through April, where we start to see our outside fires decrease. So thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And just as a reminder, when those outside fires, we have a bed, we'll be able to tell you, for everyone. So there should not be this attitude that, oh, I have to have this fire because there's nowhere else to go. To our knowledge, that is not true. And so I just want to be really clear for the public and for folks who know, there is a bed available for people to sleep. They do not have to be on the street. Now, we understand they may make choices. That's a different thing. But that bed is available. They do not have to be on the street. And they do not have to have a fire. There is a warm bed available for them. Now, related to that also, I know historically, I just want to say it, our West Side shelter used to not be the most hospitable place. It is in a vastly different place than it was last year. So to the extent there are sort of myths still around about the situation or condition of that facility or the services available, most of that has been fixed. Most of it is renovated. There are now meals there, and the HVAC works, and the roof is sealed. So all of the past excuses about, oh, I don't want to go here because it's not blank, 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 those are just not true anymore. And so we want folks to know that. Go there, get a warm bed, get a meal, and get some help. And also now there's a way to get there. That is different than just our normal bus pickups. So we just want to be really clear about those myths from the past that had some truth to them and that now are simply not true. Okay, and so let's wrap up with some roads and other winter infrastructure items with Jennifer Turner, our DMD director.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Mayor. I'm Jennifer Turner. I'm the director of the Department of Municipal Development. We're the Public Works Department that, in addition to being responsible for building and improving the city, including all of the gateways that Mayor's referenced, we're also the department responsible for keeping all the roads safe. And so I have a chart here that shows you DMD by the numbers. It's a lot of responsibilities. But most relevant to winter, we maintain more than 4,600 lane miles of roads, and that's over 7,600 acres of pavement. So those are a lot of roads that that we're responsible for. And so I'm here to say that last night I put my kids for the first time in their coats under their Halloween costumes, much to their dismay. But just like they're ready for winter, and DMD, we are also ready for winter, and we have a lot of supplies and equipment devoted to that. So specifically, we have 4 salt domes, 1 in each quadrant of the city, and we have enough salt in those domes to cover all the city's main arteries for an entire winter. And so we have 70 different snow plows that are available to go out on the roads to keep them clear. And we also have 75 employees working full time to keep everyone safe by clearing the roads. So Mayor had mentioned the temperature by which we use when we use the ice slicer. So it's 23 degrees down to 0. We use a special salt that keeps, when we're in extra cold conditions, that works on bridges and in those extra cold roads. And then above 23 degrees to freezing, we use what's called a salt cinder, which turns all the roads pink. So if you see pink, it's not Valentine's Day, it's because it's showing that our salt trucks have been by. We also have 3 brine trucks, and so including one new for this year. And those trucks will pre-treat the roads before a storm. So in DMD, we're constantly watching the weather, sometimes at 3 in the morning, always at 3 in the morning, actually, to keep an eye on storms that come in. And up to a week before the storm, we'll send those brine trucks out on the roads to spray a brine solution that will prevent them from freezing and also provide traction on those roads. So it's kind of a sneak peek for those kids that want to find out if they'll get school out next week if they see those trucks spraying water on the streets. It's not just for fun. We're actually pre-treating those roads in the event of a storm. And so those are some of the tools that we have to keep the roads safe. Just everyone drive slowly and stay tuned for our first snowstorm because we'll be ready.
Okay, so I think just to wrap up, we have Connor is available for all sorts of deep dives or exclusives on anything that we talked about here today. I want to tee up Dan Mayfield if you want to do a story on the people watching the weather at 3 a.m. There's a little cool bunker. I went there once, and it's cold in there. And it's actually pretty cool. It's one of those just, everyday things that the city does that actually is underrated and is a good story to tell. All right, Connor, anything else?
All right. Does anyone have any questions, first of all? Okay.
So I have 2. One, what is the approximate number on the homeless population in Albuquerque? And 2, how is the city also reaching out to the homeless community aside from transport shuttles to make sure that they have access to these people?
Our Director Gilbert.
Thank you for the question. So, our point in time count is the best reflection that we have with regards to the amount of unhoused in our community at one point in time. We know that we are able and typically at around 1,200 beds within our system available. We know sometimes the point in time count identifies a larger number than that are outside, probably choosing not to select shelter or enter into that. So in that sense, we try to be able to say, can we leverage not only the shelters that we've invested in and or fund, but we have our partners, and that's part of why we have this dashboard. As you'll see, one of the features on here is the actual bed counts available per site location and the percentage of where they're at. And this is important for outward-facing partners. So for that communication that you talked about going out to our community, all this is being sent out. And like I said, the fact that we actually have our plan on site that shows what we're doing is a huge step forward for us this year. The second piece is this dashboard, and when we trigger our emergency alert on our website, we'll let our providers know that if they're doing outreach to individuals and areas of the city in which there's concern, but they also know these folks will probably refuse entering into our shelter system, that they can also leverage doing that outreach to them to see is there anything they can do. So our goal is always to work in collaboration with them to support, and we're pushing all of this out. It's all live on our page now, and we're going to continue to do that with our press release, our notifications to our providers, because we need them, right? We need them, and they have the relationships, as do many of our other departments who do the street outreach, to be able to say, hey, Gilbert, are you interested in some shelter tonight? Because they're really going to hit some extremes, and we'd rather have them take you for one night, at least to stay warm, than to jeopardize frostbite, hypothermia, and or the worst, which is loss of life.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Noah.
I want to ask, obviously the city came under fire for some of its responses last winter to encampments, so I'm curious, how does this task force and these agencies, how can this kind of prevent some of those issues that happened last year?
Do you want to do fire and?
Any comments or not?
Okay.
Well, I can try to address that issue, yeah.
Yeah.
So, You know, encampment outreach it comes in many layers, right? Whether it's a safety issue, whether it's an area that's a public throughway that has to be addressed. And so this is a cross-departmental kind of approach between solid waste, ACS, whether it's fire, or it comes over into health and housing and our partners. It's very important that when we do that outreach, we continue to echo there's services available should you choose, right? The challenge I think that we always hit is there are going to be individuals who will say, you know, my home is under the stars, and I will continue to live under those stars, and therefore, thank you, not right now. But that does not mean that we don't wish to have resources like our first responder drop-off. What I would echo, and this is why I think your all's presence here, is to show these facilities so that we are lowering the belief that the facilities might not be safe, trauma-informed, or accessible, right? It's very hard to say, hey, we have first responders, they've never heard of it, and say, no, I don't want to go there. And then they come here and they're like, oh my God, they treated us so well. An outreach worker talked to us and they connected us to some type of supportive service, right? So we're going to continue to work to build that trust with the community. This is part, I'm not going to say our outreach efforts are ever going to be perfect, right? They're challenging in every unique encampment that we go to. But we want to make sure that we have a robust entry system into something that could help them should they choose to use it.
And how many of these shelters that you're partnered with are low barrier?
So we do have descriptors. I think if you click on them, they talk about whether they take pets, whether there are requirements for, you know, sobriety, etc. I will say most of the city, our largest is low barrier. First responder, same thing. And then our emergency site area locations will also be that. Our concern is safety of health, not necessarily, you know, anything else that would put a barrier up to accessing those.
And you and the mayor have mentioned that Gateway West is, you know, in short terms now safe. How is that, you know, how did it become safer? You know, what changes were made?
Absolutely. So when I stepped in as director in January, one of the first things I took to council was a strategic capital improvement plan for that facility. Understanding that, you know, it's not going to go away tomorrow, it's part of our continuum of care, and that we were going to need it. I presented to them a budget of what we needed to be able to remodel, address the bathrooms, the showers, the beds, etc. Shortly after that, council appropriated us roughly $4.5 million from a GO bond tax sale, and that allowed us to move quickly in June to start the renovations. Again, I'm proud to announce that if you haven't been out there or seen some of the photos on our websites, we've renovated 6 dormitories. We hope to have the 7th done by December. There's 12 total. We believe we have enough funding to be able to do all of them, at least by the spring, but we are really prioritizing bed space availability, so we've slowed down on that construction for our last dormitory. Much different environment. Beds are better, they're safer, right? I say we were using materials that we had before it was an old jail. And now we are really investing to saying we can change not only the safety structure as well as the environment for individuals to know. And so I've been out there myself building those beds with many volunteers from other departments. It's a much different environment now. So we hope people will utilize it and give it a chance.
Does anyone else have any questions? Anyone? Yes.
2 things. Chief Armijo, just real quick, just clarifying. You said 76 outside fires just in the 8-hour window this morning, midnight to 8 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay, just clarify
And
that I
then-
heard that right.
Okay.
And then more importantly, is there somebody who can speak to more details about the transport of folks coming here as far as transporting somebody's property if they do agree to go, safety for them being transported, safety for the drivers transporting them, anything like that?
Is it okay? We can get with you after this and
Okay.
get you a few,
Sure.
some information on
Yeah.
that. So I'll connect you with Dan
Okay.
after. One more question. Anyone else? Good. And if you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to stick around after to answer those or facilitate interviews. And also, just of note, we do have get plenty of B-roll of this if you want, but I'll also send it to you in a link with the press release. And then we also have the snowplows outside to take some good video of, and this room next door is set up. So we have beds in there, we have cots in there to show you what it would look like in an overflow situation right here at First Responder Receiving. So thank you guys all for coming out here. We appreciate it.
Could we
So,
get the
all right.
DMD numbers and the